What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Eddington, written and directed by Ari Aster and starring Joaquin Phoenix, Pedro Pascal, and Emma Stone, along with Austin Butler and a million other familiar faces. But I've been dreading both seeing and reviewing this movie for months. I felt like I was going to like soccer practice when I just wasn't in the mood to go. But it's always a relief to be wrong, a joy to be wrong when you prejudge a movie and you're completely off base in what you think it's going to be about, what tone it's going to try to establish. Basically, this movie confounded my expectations at every turn. And if you go into this movie thinking that it's going to have a particular axe to grind or that it's going to follow a particular familiar story construction, you will feel frustrated. And I did feel frustrated throughout most of the movie. But every time I thought I was kind of dreading where I was going, it would change direction and go somewhere new. I was like, wait a second, what the fuck are we watching? I like this new space that we're now exploring, but like, what the hell is going on? It really kept me on my toes, on the edge of my seat. And while you should never judge a movie by your biological functions, but it's a 2.5-hour movie, I didn't get up once to go to the bathroom. And for a man with an aging prostate, that is saying something, because usually, even if it's a 90-minute movie, I might get up once or twice just to get a little break. I was like, all right, I'm not leaving this movie until it draws to a close. And there's a moment about 3 or 4 minutes before the end of the movie where I just kind of sat back in awe. I was like, God damn, Ari Aster, he's messy and he's kind of all over the place. And it's like he's tried to put 50 movies into one instead of like picking one story. However, there's kind of a mad genius at play where I started to look at Ari Aster in a different light. Here. But before I get any deeper into this movie, maybe I should mention what it's about so people will have some idea of what the hell I'm talking about. In May of 2020, a standoff between a small-town sheriff and a mayor sparks a powder keg as neighbor is pitted against neighbor in Eddington, New Mexico. And no matter where you were living, no matter what you were doing, no matter what your point of view was back in 2020, you'll find something, A, to be shocked by, but also to laugh at in Eddington, because this movie, it's not picking sides, and I hate that expression, both sidism. It's a satire. It's making fun of a lot of people, and some people, if they're prone to be offended for being called out for their hypocrisies, maybe they'll take offense at it. Who knows? I would like to believe that everybody can have a good laugh at everybody's expense while watching this movie, and there are 2 moments in this movie I laughed so fucking hard. It was almost like all the tension that had been like pent up over the last 5 years since COVID was finally given an opportunity to express itself. And I just, like, it was one of those, like, one of the jokes is so goddamn funny. For like a few minutes afterwards, I would just kind of involuntarily chuckle as I remembered it. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil anything here.
Evil. Can we shut this bitch up?
But I suspect that this movie is going to end up being a bit of a cultural and political Rorschach test, depending upon people's preconceived notions going into it, whatever their political or cultural point of view might be about 2020. But Ari Aster, he clearly decided, you know what? Nobody's made a good movie about the craziest fucking thing that's happened to America in the last 10 years. I'm the guy. I'm the guy who's going to do it. And never in a million years would I have suspected that Ari Aster would be that filmmaker. I mean, like, Hereditary blew my mind, disturbing itself. I know it's not to everybody's taste. It really got to me. I loved it. And Midsommar was quite a ride. I mean, I just sat there in the front row just like, oh my fucking Lord, this movie's insane. Beau is Afraid was like 2/3 of like one of the most incredible movies that I've ever seen, but I hated the big fantasy adventure sequence in like at the 2/3 mark, and I really hated the very end when he's kind of being judged by everybody when he's out in the boat. So I felt like it just kind of rolled over and died when it could have been, one of the best movies of the last couple of years. But Ari Aster, clearly brilliant young filmmaker. I mean, young-ish. I don't know if he's still under 40 or not, but he's on the younger side of things. Definitely one of the best talents to emerge in the last 10 years. And A24, they gobbled him up. They got him. They got their hooks into him. Like, look, whatever you want to do, we're here for it. And I'm actually kind of blown away that anybody in the movie business would make this movie, because even though A24 is a New York-based company, it's still the movie business. And obviously, if you're going to like function and thrive and work in the movie biz, it helps if you adhere to certain left-of-center progressive values. But this movie is not necessarily signing on the dotted line of all the causes and ideas that you would assume it would have to in order for all the actors and filmmakers involved with the movie not to get blacklisted by the industry. So there's hope for independent thinkers, independent thought, and that's very refreshing. And Ari Aster, is he 100% successful in his goals and aspirations? I mean, I'll say this. Eddington is a complex enough movie and an unpredictable enough movie that it demands, or it's going to command, second and third viewings before you can fully wrap your head around it. And because, like I said, I went into it openly hostile to it, assuming I was going to hate the movie, assuming I was going to have 2.5 hours of sheer drudgery. And I just was mesmerized. It helps that Joaquin Phoenix is like full throttle Joaquin Phoenix in this. And I've been very frustrated by Joaquin Phoenix in recent years, where he kind of does like that sleepy voice, like he's been like up all night on edibles and he's just like too spaced out to fully articulate his words. He's incredible in this. And it's interesting watching him lock horns with Pedro Pascal. And it's interesting watching him lock horns with Emma Stone, who plays his wife, because this is a world where if you have a fight with your wife in this setting, in Eddington, you're not going to have like a rational conversation about your feelings. One or the other person is just going to go online and vocalize or articulate their frustration there, and they're just going to let everybody know, kind of eat you alive. Like this is a society in free fall that is going insane, ripping itself to pieces, while at the same time like allowing us to laugh at their expense. So at times you're going to feel like you're going insane. At times it's going to feel a little bit like deja vu. I mean, I spent the summer of 2020 or May of 2020 here in New York. It was not a fun experience. And there's parts of Eddington. Maybe that's the greatest accomplishment of Eddington, is that it's finally allowing me to laugh at the madness of that summer, as opposed to constantly like refusing to look back at it whatsoever. Every once in a while, a filmmaker needs to observe the madness of our times and try and capture it for future generations. And 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if a little kid's like, hey, mommy, like, what was it like to be around in the summer of 2020? Let's say, honey, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch a little movie called Eddington and, buckle your safety belts. And I try to go out of my way never to do the deep dive on any political issues on this channel. And who knows, maybe that's a sign of cowardice on my part, but this is a channel devoted to a love of movies and books and video games and that sort of thing. But obviously, sometimes movies are going to explore political topics. And I'll say this. I stayed in New York for the entirety of COVID, and I'll never forget walking out onto 7th Avenue. I'm looking all the way north and all the way south. And this is early days. And there wasn't a car. There wasn't a person. It was like stepping onto the set of 28 Days Later in London, where there's not a person in sight. I was like, whoa. And then fast forward to the summer during the George Floyd protests, when it was like stores boarded up, police cars on fire. People were quite literally like leaving stacks of like bricks and stones on my block so people would have weapons to throw. And of course, my super and his infinite wisdom would just bring those inside and be like, yeah, no one's going to do anything good with any of that. But it was just insane going from like the silence of a tomb to total social anarchy in the span of a few months. And I feel like, we've all spent the last half decade trying to digest or forget about that entire fucking summer, and just like the way people behaved online, and nobody's innocent of some sort of ugly behavior or ignorant behavior or hostile behavior during that summer. And I'm sure if somebody were to, show me videos of some of my private conversations with people at that time, I'd be like, ugh, can we delete that?
Well, here's a quote from you. Arm yourselves.
I don't mean literal arms.
And I think a lot of people have just decided to have some very convenient amnesia about their personal conduct during that period. And when you watch Eddington, you'll be like, oh, I used to do that, or, oh, I knew somebody who lives next door who did precisely that. And that's part of the joy of this, is that it is just ruthless in its desire and willingness to shine a light on the hypocrisies of our time. And I can't imagine what it was like to be on the set of this movie, because I'm sure a lot of the people on the movie were guilty of some of the behavior being explored in the movie, but hopefully they all had a good chuckle. But let's talk about some of the cast, because Pedro Pascal, God, I don't want to give any spoilers, but he will surprise people in terms of the how his character is portrayed and what he stands for and what he's fighting for, as will Joaquin Phoenix. Like, you can't just like take certain characters and say, oh, this is the Antifa guy and this is the pro-gun guy. Like, nobody falls neatly into certain categories. They might have certain behavior patterns that are familiar, but people usually are like a blend of like 2 or 3 major personality types that like might have been more prevalent at that time. And that is part of the genius of it. And yeah, Emma Stone goes all out. Luke Grimes was pretty goddamn good. He made me laugh repeatedly. But there's a young actor by the name of Cameron Mann who plays the character of Brian. Oh my God. I won't say what, why, or how. He has 2 scenes where, people are going to be vomiting with laughter, like holding their sides with laughter. In my theater, once again, in the heart of New York, where obviously people tend to lean one way politically, they were screaming with laughter, and it was not because it was grinding an axe for some progressive cause. If anything, it was the exact opposite. But there's all kinds of ridiculous behavior on display. Like, the classic example would be somebody who's not wearing a mask properly, where it's basically a diaper around their chin, and yet they're pointing at somebody and saying, put your mask on, back up 6 feet, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of that stuff taking place left and right throughout the movie. And because of those jokes, I was willing to be patient when the movie was kind of frustrating me or slowing down or kind of going in unpredictable directions. And maybe it just helps that I smoked a big fat cigar before walking in. And if you smoke a cigar for like the next few hours, you are like you are high energy. I think I'm still feeling the nicotine buzz all these hours later. And that was like 3 o'clock and it's 8 o'clock here in New York now. So yeah, maybe my advice would be take some sort of substance ahead of time that'll make you very alert and eager to pay attention, and you'll be more willing to be patient with the movie when it's proving to be difficult, not difficult to follow. It's very easy to follow, but difficult to stick with because you keep wanting things from it that it stubbornly refuses to give you. And what's incredible is how Ari Aster seems totally willing to lose a huge chunk of his audience between the beginning of the movie and the end, almost like he doesn't care. It reminds me a little bit of Andy Kaufman, where back in the day he sold tickets for a comedy show. He got up on stage and he read The Great Gatsby cover to cover. Didn't tell any jokes. He didn't do any voices. He didn't do any Mighty Mouse routine. He just read The Great Gatsby. And by the end of the show, nearly everybody had left. And there's footage of it, people booing, getting pissed, like, fuck you, and all that stuff. He's like, calm down, everybody. We still have a long way to go. And he just keeps stubbornly reading. And I don't know what his goal was. And some might say, Ari Aster's doing a similar thing here. He's reading The Great Gatsby, and if only 3 people make it to the end, he doesn't care because he knows those are his people. But it wouldn't surprise me if after the dust is settled and after people have had a chance to watch it, wrestle with it, argue with their friends about it, argue with it. I don't know if it's a good date movie. If you disagree politically, might be the date might be over. But I think after people have had a chance to wrestle with it for a month or two, it might end up being people's favorite movie by Ari Aster. My favorite still might be I can't even, Hereditary. I was like, my favorite movie, I love it so much I can't even remember the name, but my favorite still might be Hereditary just because it kind of blindsided me and came out of nowhere. But Eddington is definitely his most ambitious. And if you're looking for gorgeous photography or technical expertise or a high level of craftsmanship, goddamn, yeah, Ari Aster continues to evolve as a filmmaker. And I do think it takes some real courage as a filmmaker where you're risking your career and your reputation and your ability to continue making movies where you kind of stubbornly refuse to make commercially viable or commercially accessible movies because there are no clear-cut heroes or villains. Some people might project onto some characters hero qualities or villainous qualities, but you will be disappointed no matter who you choose to project those qualities onto, because everybody eventually is going to do something totally ridiculous. Like, this is a very, very mild spoiler, but there are a lot of George Floyd protests during the movie. And you see how a lot of these boys that go to these protests, they're only there because the hottest girl in class is there and she's very politically active. And so they're just like, oh, yeah, like, your causes, I'll be there. And they're all kind of fawning over like little puppy dogs, but it's like, it definitely cuts off at the knees a lot of the sincerity of a lot of people's deeply held political beliefs and that sort of thing. And so it's hard to find people to root for. And oftentimes when people are watching a movie where there's no one to root for over 2.5 hours, they get pissed, and justifiably so. I'm not saying everybody's going to like this movie. I'm not saying that I even like the entire movie. But goddamn, anytime you can go into a movie where you're expecting to hate it and kind of almost prepared to hate it and like preparing your arguments against it before you've even seen it, and then it pulls a 180 on you and kind of lures you over to its side, it's doing something special. And so going into it, I kept thinking like, oh my God, like Pedro Pascal, is he overexposed? Like, we've had him in Materialists, and we've had him in The Last of Us Season 2, and there's something else that he was in, some other movie. Can't even remember. He's been in so many movies recently, he keeps popping up too much. And obviously he's got Fantastic Four First Steps coming out next week. But as somebody who was fully prepared to say that Pedro Pascal is absolutely 100% overexposed at this point, he was good in this. And Emma Stone's really good. I mean, I feel like I keep repeating myself, oh, so-and-so's really good. So it's hard to explain why without giving away some spoilers, but let's talk a little bit about violence. And obviously when you talk about the summer of 2020, violence at a certain point comes into the equation, whether you're talking about people who said silence is violence or that violence is speech. I mean, people were changing the definition of nonviolence and violence left and right. It was hard to even keep track of what the definition of violence was, but as far as movies go, you will see violence in this movie, and holy shit. Like, this movie is exploring a lot of different genres. Like, there's political satire and social satire and like kind of madcap comedy and just a lot of ridiculous stuff. And at a certain point, I was like, is this turning into one of those cool, kind of edgy Southwestern thrillers? Like, I didn't want it to go that direction. I never anticipated that. But, you know, if it goes there, like if it wants to become the next No Country for Old Men, like, all right, I'll stick with it and see where it's going. It doesn't become that. However, if you like the violence in No Country for Old Men, like shootouts in the streets that are totally deserted in the middle of a desert, God damn, this movie really delivers. And I didn't even know that Ari Aster had it in him to deliver this kind of like on-screen carnage. You know, it's in the poster for Eddington, Joaquin Phoenix holding a big fucking machine gun. I think that's the moment that the movie really came together for me, because all the tension that had been building, all the frustration that had been building, it finally had an outlet. I was like, all right, we can all finally let off a little steam and watch Joaquin Phoenix just go on a murderous rampage against foes who I will not underline or call attention to, because that's part of the fun and the surprise of where this is going, the last minute appearance of a particular organization in this movie. But perhaps the most entertaining aspect of this movie is seeing how different people will exploit the crisis to invent a new online persona. And I don't know if I should be proud or ashamed that I did not discuss COVID at all on this channel at that time. Like, my channel got very silent. I mean, there were no movies, no trailers, no TV shows. Like, there was just nothing to talk about. I spent most of that summer just playing video games and occasionally having saucy dates with the girl I was seeing at that time, just as like an escape from all the hell of that period. But like, you know, but I definitely noticed when certain people decided to take on the voice of like, you know, like a wellness guru or political philosopher, like people who had no credentials or no background that would actually justify them taking on these personas. But this movie really skewers that inclination, or someone would just invent an entirely new persona with which they can kind of spew their, you know, their fucked up wisdom upon the overly persuasive masses who are just like eating it up with a spoon and acting in increasingly deranged ways, but at the same time letting you laugh at their expense. Like, there are definitely some horrific moments where, like, oh my fucking God, but this movie is not trying to take itself too seriously. Or maybe it is trying to take itself too seriously, but pretending as if it's not. In any case, it is a full meal, and I feel like you know, it's the full meal that I wasn't expecting this summer, but it's, as far as like art house cinema is concerned, it's definitely the movie of the summer, because whether you love it or hate it, it's not boring. Like, it's going to be very easy and exciting to discuss for a good long time. And I imagine that a lot of people will make up their mind after they see it one time, and they might change their opinion abruptly after seeing it a second time. Like, oh my God, I'm seeing it in a totally new light. It's that complex and interesting, and the fact that I think it's sitting like at 60% on Rotten Tomatoes is just fine. Like, let there be a healthy, angry debate about whether or not this movie fucking rules, or if it fucking sucks, or if it's somewhere in between. But like I said, you will not be bored if you are willing to give the movie a chance. But there it is. That is probably the most I'll ever be willing to discuss politics or current events ever on this channel, because like most people, even if they don't want to admit it, when I discuss politics, my tendency is to take my foot and insert it into my mouth, and sometimes I just keep shoving it and my whole leg goes in. I think it reminds me of that line in the show Deadwood, where at one point Al Swearingen said, "I'm stupidest when I try to be funny. I am stupidest when I try to be political." I just try to steer people towards kick-ass movies and kick-ass books, like experiences that they might love, and I leave the politics to them. Let them do their own homework, form their own conclusions. I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. I'm just here to call attention to certain pieces of content or media or film or art or literature that I think people might respond to. People are definitely going to respond to Eddington. So it was actually, even though it was a review I was dreading doing, it was actually a very easy review to put together. It spewed right out of me like vomit. And I'm sure some people are like, dude, go back to not talking about politics. Like, that's, your instinct was right. But it's impossible not to discuss politics to some extent if you are going to discuss Eddington. But not to worry, the next movie I'm seeing, like this was the full meal, but the dessert, I'm going to go see I Know What You Did Last Summer, which apparently is one of the worst movies ever made. And so I'll be back to discussing inane, vapid, genre nonsense tomorrow once I awaken from my slumber. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Try to keep things calm, rational, sensible, and nice. I hope people appreciate that I tried to approach this topic somewhat in good faith, apart from my gag about wearing all the masks, which I've hung on to all these last 5 years. But look forward to hearing what people have to say over the next few days. But if you like this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.